Yes, hello tradies, Season 3, Episode 3. Carlton, a huge talking point in more ways than one. Welcome to the program, all thanks to the great people at St Andrew's Brewery, the new brewery at Melbourne Park, the only place to be before a game at the G. Hello, Mitchell.
Hello, Sam. What an honour it was to get a text from you in your Carlton hat. Actually, you weren't wearing it on the weekend. You were in the tradies cap at the St Andrews Beach Brewery at Melbourne Park. 4-minute walk to the MCG. And so I think Scotty put on the Instagram pictures before disaster. You were just there.
Did he? I didn't see that.
You were there getting your $15 cheeseburger.
Yes.
On Thursday night before the Blues shat the bed at the MCG.
Oh,
the Carlton hat today is one and done.
Oh, wow.
No, I've been sitting on this for a few days.
Yeah, so firstly, had my first experience with mates at the brewery. Absolutely pumping, by the way. Got there, saw Tim and Carla, the great duo from St Andrews. Live music going, lots of people in their scarves. It was great. And then I walked my mate James over to the G and I went home.
You went home?
I just, I'd been at the Grand Prix all day. I was ready for the couch, diva, commentary. And that went well for me. I was glad I was alone on Thursday night.
Was it a better experience than the Great Northern Hotel last year when the Blues conceded the first 10 goals against the Lions? And
I don't. See, you're bringing up pain. Yeah. Yep.
Is that the worst Carlton loss this century?
I've seen some bad ones.
There's some bad ones, but this is the team we're talking about for top four. We're talking about a Richmond team that you and I discussed would barely win 2 or 3 games.
Yep. Can I just, I don't really, unless you want to talk about their list, I don't really want to get weighed down by the Carlton chat, other than to say the last few days, it's happened again. Is their list that good?
Actually, I did hear you and Matthew Lloyd discussing this on AW.
Well, I mean, Lloyd is one of the all-time great analysts, so I love debating things with him. And the question is the question he's posed is, do we get sucked in by the names too much? Whereas, as my point is, I don't think. Okay, well, let's just get into this now, right? So if we're going to talk about it,
yeah.
So yesterday I did a quick comparison. I'm going to find my research assistant Dan here because I messaged him In fact, why am I doing that when I literally have the notebook in front of me where it's written down?
So Dan's had the baby. He's now got his mind back into footy.
He's back at work.
Yep.
So he's and Seb got to witness his first win as a Hawthorn supporter, which is great. So we've talked about, and I think we mentioned when we were doing the Hawthorn preview for the 7-11 previews, guys that just come to the club and get better.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's a great indication of a club with a strong culture, but also a strong football program.
Yep.
Right. So Hawthorn's 10 that I can see that come from another club: Impey, Frost, Amon, Scrimshaw, D'Ambrosio, Meek, Chol, Ginnivan. That's 8. I would say all of them have improved from Club A to Club B.
Yep.
And the only 2 that I've got question marks over are Battle and Barras.
Yep.
And they've made a pretty good start.
Yes.
But, is there a big enough sample space? Then I get to Carlton. Chera? No. Williams has gotten worse.
Yep.
Fogarty? Question mark. McGovern? No. Newman? Tick.
Yep. Big tick.
Haynes? Question mark. Played one of the worst games he's ever played on the weekend. Lewis Young's gotten worse. Sard, you would give a tick to, but he was a pretty good player at Essendon.
Yes.
But I'm happy to say that he's improved, sure. Akers had an excellent year his last year at Freo, but I think has improved on the linear scale, so I think yes.
Big moment player.
Fantasia, no. Pitnet, no. Not many blokes, Hewitt, no. Not many blokes get to Carlton and get better.
Yeah. That's pretty damning.
That's an indictment on them.
Yep.
So, you can say that don't have a good list if you want, but on paper, they've had all the draft picks they've ever wanted. They've handpicked blokes from other clubs, the vast majority of whom they have got. And they're really tight in the salary cap. So explain to me how their list isn't ready to go. And yes, it's only round one. And yes, in a couple of days, let alone a couple of months, we might be having a completely different conversation about Carlton. Because let me be frank with you, it would be the most Carlton thing of all time to come out and beat Hawthorn.
Yes, it would.
But that's a result that... So the last 2 years, Carlton have had two very different halves of each season, right? In 23, they started terribly. They were 16th on the ladder and then went on a run and made a prelim. And then 24, the opposite happened. They were second on the ladder at round 18. The arse fell out of them. They limped into the finals, got pumped.
So it's time to go back to 23.
No. What I'm saying is Carlton go on these runs of good and bad, right? That's a result that may end up costing them either a spot in the top four or a spot in the top eight when we look back. And it's like, how did they lose to Richmond? So that's why I think it's an extremely disappointing loss. And I think that they'll regret it. And yeah, I think from a list perspective, they've done everything that they could have done to build the right list to move forward. And
except for me, is still the centre half back next to Wiedering. I think they've got 3 third tall defenders running around there with McGovern, Haynes, and Silvani. That there's not another pillar next to that gun defender in Jacob Wiedering.
Yeah, possibly. But North Melbourne were more competitive against the Western Bulldogs with no defenders.
Well, Core, Comben and Logue is a more traditional 2 key backs and a third.
So Core's played the majority of his career as a third tall.
Yeah.
Logue's played the majority of his career injured. And Comben is still a work in progress. So I would dispute that. Carlton have an all-Australian defender who will go down as one of the best modern fullbacks of the last 25 years.
Yeah.
North Melbourne would give their left arm for Jacob Wiedering.
Oh, no, absolutely. But in terms of the hot, I don't dispute anything you just said, but what my biggest point is they need a second centre half back.
Yeah, maybe to be what the perfect list.
Yeah, in terms of
Melbourne won a flag without a full forward.
Yeah,
in 21.
Lever and May.
Yeah, but I'm saying every good list has a hole.
Yeah.
Carlton are an excuse-based football club. They have been for a long time. They'll find any excuse they can find. They can locate just to tell people this is why it didn't work out. Instead of saying, instead of putting all behind them and concentrate on what they do have.
Yeah, I'll get seduced by their best.
And they're using Cripps in the ruck.
That's silly. Their best 6 players are all 24 to 30. You think, shit, it's go time now. Plus, I haven't mentioned, Sard, Akers, Hewitt. They've got some senior guys in the right age demographic now. Chera.
Yep.
He's not in that top 6. But their bottom 5 or 6 is still the question, isn't it? Compared to
I don't think so. No. I think everyone's bottom 5 or 6 is poor.
But Carlton's hasn't got, you could say Carlton's bottom 5 or 6 this year is a lesser quality than it was last year.
I don't think so.
Maybe that's one for next week to do the data on that.
Yes, maybe it is.
In brighter notes, how was the F1? I saw you there. You absorbing it?
It's the best event in sport.
In Melbourne or just sport?
No, I mean the Olympics is the best event in sport. Mm-hmm. But in Australia, it's the best sporting event I've been to.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's hard to argue.
It's amazing. Get ready for Air Raid Siren. I've got a little bit more on it.
Okay.
We'll talk about
a few learnings from the F1 that you might be able to take into footy?
I think so.
Okay. Was there a few AFL types
If you're a player, I think Zach Merritt's going to enjoy the Air Raid.
Well, we know he listens. Was there any AFL types there doing a bit of what they would call personal development?
Lots of AFL types being escorted through the paddock. Lots of AFL types. I got a garage tour with McLaren.
Oh, wow. Nice.
So if people that are interested in F1, even the people that aren't, to actually see inside the garage and what goes on for these multi-million-dollar vehicles. It's pretty cool. It's the richest sport in the world. It's also the coolest sport in the world, I reckon. And the drivers are the coolest people in the world. Like Lewis Hamilton is just the definition of a rock star.
Yeah.
If I could just be just a little bit like Lewis Hamilton, just like 0.5%.
Flat for Oscar. Anyway, we're not an F1 podcast. Maybe you could have a breakaway F1 pod.
I would love that. Maybe it's me and Scotty. Breakaway. You an F1 fan, Scotty?
I'm getting into it this year. Trying it this week. So.
Good time slots early for us. Then it gets a bit shit.
Before we get, or should we just get straight to the whiteboard?
Yeah,
let's get to the whiteboard. There's a couple of big stories that I think are going to explode. It's going to be a big trade period. Brought to you by the great people at HBF Health Insurance, your health dream team. Make the trade to HBF today. So and we've got a new look whiteboard, by the way.
Brand new magnets. Scotty's had a big week.
We've gone so we're actually going to write our own magnets instead of our terrible handwriting, just like skewing all over the whiteboard. So Mitch has got Warner, Jackson, Rowell. I've got JUH, TDK, LDU, and Oscar Allen. I do want to talk about Oscar, his mate Harley, and the Weagles, but I'm going to let you add one because you look keen.
Well, you took 3 players with 3 initials to start, and I've thought I better get in on the party. I'm going to add NWM, Nasiah Wanganeen-Milera from the St Kilda Footy Club, entering his 5th year. So entering his 4th year, I should say. After this, he's got 4 years to run to free agency. He's got a big decision to make around mega offers from the Crows and the Power, and they are going to come hard for a South Australian native taken in the top 10 by the Saints 5 years ago. He's going to have to make a big call, and I don't think it's around his love for the Saints. I think you always hear people say, if the St Kilda Footy Club were in Adelaide, he'd re-sign tomorrow. But it's the lure of home and the connection to South Australia that he's weighing up big time.
It's a long way away, Adelaide. You can understand. I do. Every time these things come up, I think to myself, yep. No, I totally get it.
Well, Ollie Henry moved an hour down the road, and that's in a car. So this is an hour in the plane.
Go on. I'm just not getting sucked into that conversation because it's going to get me in trouble.
There's going to be different options from the Saints on the table. 2 years to get him to stick around, 4 years to take him to free agency. The issue the Saints have got here is they cannot lowball Nasiah Wanganeen-Milera. And I'm not suggesting they're going to do that. But now that he and his management know what's on the table with the players like Finn Callaghan, Tom De Koning, what they offered Andy Brayshaw, he's knocked back, what they've had recently for De Goey, what they had on the table for Battle before he knocked back. Everyone in footy knows that the Saints have got more money than they know what to do with. They've got the most money any club has ever had on the table in the history of the competition. He would not be saying yes to anything less than 1.3, 1.4 at the Saints right now. He just can't.
It's a lot of money for a player of his type, isn't it?
But when you're looking at what they're trying to attract from elsewhere, he's as important as anyone.
He is. That's right. But he's not a key forward, and he's not a gut busting midfielder.
No.
So,
but you're the top 3 kicks in the comp.
But you're right for what St Kilda are and for everything they're trying to be.
Yeah.
You can't on one hand be offering the kitchen sink to 3 or 4 different players from other clubs, but then lose the guy that you need to keep hold of.
Yeah.
So optics-wise as well as list-wise, it's an important situation for the Saints.
And with their list build and where they've gone to, Ross will tell you, Andrew Bassett will tell you that we had to go backwards to go forwards, which at the time we all think, well, you were on the cusp of finals, what are you doing? But the more you look at it, they have gone to the draft hard the last 3 seasons, and they go to go get these guys like Nasiah Wanganeen-Milera to set them up for the future. Now, he should be the cornerstone of the next flag side, but to lose him would be just a disaster for where they're headed. So it is a big call for the future of the St Kilda Footy Club. And I can't, well, from what I understand, there's no immediate talks underway, so it's going to take a little bit of time to play out.
So you might have heard me talk about this before, but like nailing your high-end picks in the draft, particularly when you're a side that's building, is so important. Like we've talked about North, we've talked about Melbourne, talked about Carlton.
Brisbane won the flag last year with 5 or 6 gun first rounders that they've taken themselves.
When you look at the Saints, there's a lot of different elements with their top picks. So let me just recently, Clark and Caulfield, 2 top 10 picks when they had access to. Like, they're just misses.
Yep.
One's no longer at the club anymore in Caulfield, who's now at the Dogs. And Clark just through, myriad of reasons, injury and form, hasn't been the player that they thought.
And Hunter Clark just signed a 2-year deal as a first-time free agent, which usually those guys are commanding 5-6-year deals.
So they're misses, right? So I have no sympathy for them there. They're just bad picks. Max King, anyone else would have taken him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Obviously coming off a knee, has had lots of injury problems, and his injury problems have been made to look worse by the fact that his brother Ben is, becoming the player that they hoped Max would.
Scotty and my Coleman medal tip, by the way.
Ben King, that's splitting the atom, isn't it?
19 bucks.
We don't talk about gambling here, Scotty. Gamble responsibly. So I have empathy with that top end pick. Wanganeen-Milera as a pick 11.
Sorry, he's a pick 11. I keep saying he's a top 10.
It's just an excellent pick.
Yep.
Given that at the time there was a lot of pressure to take the bloke who grew up down the road and had pace to burn, and was a good side, and that was Josh Sin.
Yes.
Who went the next pick to Port Adelaide. So let me just remind you of the 2021 draft for those wondering. Horn Francis went 1, Darcy was father-son at 2, Callahan 3, Nick Dacos father-son 4, Mac Andrew 5, Rochelle 6, Ward 7, a miss 8. Pretty good draft so far. Gibcus 9, Erasmus 10, Wanganeen-Milera 11, Sin 12, Hobbs 13, Chesser 14, Leckerlier 15, Darcy Wilmot 16.
Good player, Darcy Wilmot.
Yeah, agreed. So the reason I'm bringing all this up is that if Wanganeen-Milera was to end up leaving, all of a sudden there's another top-end pick. So you've missed, then you've had a guy with injury concerns, then you've absolutely nailed one at 11 who looks like, as you said, top 3 player in your team, could be, a top 15 player in the comp,
Yep.
depending on, if his linear graph continues to go in the same way.
Is he on A-grade watch for Sam's A-grade?
He's on A-grade watch. Yep, he's on A-grade watch. There's a lot to talk about with the A-graders, by the way. Jim McGovern didn't have a good game. But anyway, we digress.
Can't wait for McGovern to play on Tex. We should have a watch party.
Actually, that's a good point. Tex didn't. Yep. If he was to leave, I'd feel desperately sad for St Kilda supporters and for their list build because that hurts.
Yeah.
And it's always the risk when you draft a South Australian or a West Australian, in the same way that it's a risk when West Coast draft Harley Reid. There's always going to be...
Did they take Harley Reid?
They did. They picked him. I didn't think that they would, but they did. So I feel for the Saints in this situation. How much, just before we get off this, how much do you think he is going to be lured by money versus potential success?
I would say the Saints have more money to offer than the others.
Yeah. So if the Saints were looking like a top 4 team right now,
yeah,
would you be much more confident that he'd be committed?
I'd be more confident,
but still the lure of home is huge for him.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's almost, we always say like players like Tom de Koning will have to knock back more money to stay. He's almost going to have to.
Yeah.
The inverse of that.
Yep. He's going to have to take less money to leave.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably.
Yeah, interesting. So he's up?
He's up.
Well done. So can we have a little chat about West Coast?
Yes.
Okay.
Did you take in that Sunday night clash?
I did. Actually, do you know? No, I won't go there.
No. Give it to us.
No, I was. The house that I am living in now, that's only been about a year. I'm not really a bath person, but it's got a big bath in it,
I thought you were going to go the ghosts again.
and so I've started having Sunday night baths, and I've got the game on the iPad on the shelf. And anyway, that was
No. Keep going.
that was all. And I get the bath salts out and anyway.
a bit too much of a picture there.
The bubble bar. Okay, so West Coast are a team that should be rebuilding, and for all intents and purposes, they're not really. Like, the team that played on the weekend wasn't that inexperienced. I'll just give you some of the names that played. So Jaden Hunt's 30, Flynn's 28, Tom Cole's 28, Duggan's 29, Owi's 28, Baker 27, Cripps is 33, Tim Kelly's 31, McGovern's 33, Jack Graham's 27, Waterman's 27, Oscar Allen 26. Oscar Allen, obviously, yep. And the guys that didn't play, Liam Ryan 29, Dom Sheed 30, Yo 32, Petruccelli 26. It's not as though, like, we're not talking about, like, North Melbourne here, of, like, I've got a whole midfield of 22-year-olds.
I'll just go on the average age from the games on the weekend. 25 years and 3 months, West Coast. 25 years and 6 months, Gold Coast.
Yeah.
So Gold Coast, on average, 3 months older.
It's just a terrible list. And it could get worse.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't want to go down the Harley Reid path again, because I know what it's going to do, and I know everyone, you know, rolls their eyes. But this was the risk when you draft a guy like that with not a whole heap around him.
They miss Yo on the weekend. He was the guy last year that Reid could bounce off.
I understand that, but he's 32.
Yes.
Tim Kelly played like a guy on the weekend that didn't really want to be there, and was already, you know, during the Indigenous All-Stars game talking about his contract. So I really feel, I really feel for their first-time coach. You know, McWalter's going to have a tough time, and he's got. I can't remember a team in their position, in their list build position, that has had a brand new coach walk in with the captain and the most generational talent that the club's seen since Chris Judd, at the same time having their futures talked about.
Yeah.
Can you remember that? Like,
No, that's a good point.
you know, you think about, you know, Carlton when they were starting off with, you know, Murphy, Cruiser, Gibbs. Melbourne when they were starting off, help me out here, with who did they have back in the day? Scully,
Watts.
Trengrove, Watts. North, you know, back in the day when they had, I mean, you could talk about it now, right? Wardlaw, Sheasel, McKercher.
Yep. Dersma.
Those clubs were being talked about as how many games they were going to win, yes. But were they being talked about as the captain and a guy who's been there for, you know, less than 18 months? Leaving? No.
Yeah. So do you feel what they did last year by going to get Graham Baker was just a stopgap? They should have just gone for youth?
I mean, I think Baker helps them, and I don't disagree with the move. And Graham was a free agent.
Yeah.
So
Didn't cost you draft capital.
doesn't cost you draft
Baker
capital.
cost you a pick 14 and you had to split pick 3 in the process to do that.
That was a disaster, splitting pick 3. It was more, and I said this 12 months ago, they didn't work hard enough to get more picks. So if you wanted to take Reid with 1, they had to get more picks in and around the first round to build with him, because they were just holding off the inevitable. And I really, really fear for them this year. And if I was the AFL, remember that the AFL hate teams that are uncompetitive. You know, Gil McLachlan came in, I've said this before, sorry people that have heard this before, his first press conference said, I want every single set of club supporters to go to the footy on a Saturday and think to myself that I'm a genuine chance of winning. Now, he has been hugely successful in almost all of that. But the West Coast Eagles look like a team that for the foreseeable future will not be competitive.
Yeah.
And they got absolutely decimated by a team that has never played finals and had, up until the weekend, lost 19 of their previous 23 on the road.
Yeah, wait till West Coast have to start hitting the road as well.
Who are West Coast playing this week? Oh, are they playing Brisbane away?
Correct.
I mean, that could be that could be horrific.
I keep coming back to the Tim Kelly trade, which at the time we all thought, well, they've in flag contention. They've just, won it in 18. They've gone and got Tim Kelly into 19. But they give up 2 first-rounders. Those 2 first-rounders right now would be 23-year-olds. Instead, you got Tim Kelly running.
Question without notice. Do we know who those picks were? Oh,
I don't know the exact.
Yep.
It'll take.
No, it's okay. Yep.
Yeah. But they're the decisions you make in your list build. The Crows did it with Bryce Gibbs, and it set them back a while.
Yeah. Yep. Anyway, I feel for McWalter because there's not much he can do at the moment.
Should we stick with my whiteboard momentarily with Luke Jackson, who spoke yesterday?
Oh, yes. Very excited for this.
In the West. So he's playing his 100th game on the weekend, which has crept up pretty quick. He's got there pretty quick, I reckon.
He has,
Luke
yeah,
Jackson.
I agree. Yep.
Played pretty durable, played a lot of footy. Responding to questions around our reporting that Victorian clubs feel that he could be lured back at the end of the season. This is Luke Jackson speaking in WA.
I love playing at Freo. I've always wanted to play here since I was a little kid. Yeah, I'll definitely be here and, love my time here. Nah, it's all rubbish, to be honest. We played him a few weeks ago here in Mandarin. I won a premiership with him. I got good relationships with him. So, I'll obviously give him the time of day and stuff. But, some of my best mates are in that team and, it was good to see him.
Now, Mitchell, when you were listening to this, your story, it's a great story and it's got all tongues wagging. Tell me what you were thinking when you were listening to that.
I'm thinking he's pretty definitive there. But the first thing I thought of was Dan Houston in August last year, who, don't forget, the timelines are a lot shorter on the Houston one than Jackson. Jackson's talking in March. There's a lot of runway until October when he has to make a decision. And I just want to put on record, and I've said this the whole way along, I'm not saying Luke Jackson's wanting out or agitating for this.
No.
Cal Toomey reported last week that he has had conversation with Melbourne premiership teammates suggesting he'd be open to looking at a move.
Yep. You reported, off the top of my head, that Victorian clubs, including his former club Melbourne, thought that he was potentially attainable.
Yep, and thought his head could be turned.
Yes.
He's had a change in his off-field situation.
Yes.
His new partner is Victorian born and bred.
Kelsey, yep.
And clubs here are putting the work in to think that he could be turned. Now, Dan Houston said this in August when there'd been long reports linking him back to a move to Victoria while he was under contract at Port Adelaide on a long-term deal.
Where is your future? Is it at the Port Adelaide Football Club?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I've said in the past that I'm contracted and I absolutely love the footy club. I love being in Adelaide. And
So you're not leaving next year?
no, I'm not leaving next year.
So you're really saying you're going to stay there?
Yeah, I'm contracted there. I wouldn't have signed the contract if I wasn't, keen on Adelaide or keen on Port Adelaide. And, I love the place. I love the footy club and the footy club's been good to me. So, I'm committed to Port Adelaide.
That was 6 weeks before he told his teammates he wanted to go and play in Victoria. He wanted to go to Carlton. He ended up going to Collingwood. He's since said that he had to tell a white lie just to take the heat out of the situation. He said that.
I know.
Should we go the Tom Barrass one?
I'm waiting for it.
Tom Barrass, this is, I reckon, July last year when there were reports linking him back to a move to the Western Bulldogs. He's since signed for Hawthorn on a long-term deal and relocated his family.
Mate, I don't read the media or the social media. I usually find out when I'm sitting in here in front of you. But, mate, it happens every year and it's hardly a story. AFL clubs chasing established key position player. It's just the currency of football, and so I wouldn't be reading it into it too much. Mate, I'm a West Coast Eagles player, and unless the rug gets pulled out from under my feet, I'll stay that way. And I'm really excited about what we're doing here. I'm really excited about some of the talent. I think we've got some progress we still need to make, and we've got some improvements that we can make before we're going to be considered a good team. But I believe we can do it, and I believe that if we work as a team, it's a lot closer than people probably perceive.
Now, I'm not calling Luke Jackson a liar, and I'm actually glad he came out and did that yesterday because he needs to tell his footy club and his teammates that he's committed. But all I'm pointing out is that's 2 recent examples in the last 12 months. Things can change a hell of a lot, and Victorian clubs here wouldn't be doing their work on Luke Jackson for nothing if they felt his head couldn't be turned.
Okay, so here's my checklist for if you're a player that has been linked to a trade. Here's my checklist when you get asked about it, right? 1, refer back to your contract.
Yep.
I'm a contracted player, I wouldn't sign it. I've got 3 years. 2, blame the media. Well, I don't read it. Wouldn't read too much into it. It's all rubbish. And 3, give yourself an out, which they all basically have. Also,
Houston didn't. Barris would argue the rug was pulled out from under him because West Coast didn't come to the party on the deal that was verbally suggested would come his way.
Also, and the prequel to all of that is do an interview with local state media in which they serve up put away smash. So like Houston on local radio, and then Jackson gets put up in front of local Perth journos, and we know some great Perth journos, but local media can be a little bit.
They got the gear change. They got the blinkers on.
I think the blinkers do go on a little bit when they're talking about their own. Imagine if Luke Jackson had been put up, say, at Melbourne Airport in front of Melbourne media, and they let barking Mitch Cleary after him.
I do like an airport.
You do. You once stayed overnight at Melbourne Airport to get Nick Kyrgios. Well, that was what the story turned into anyway. Yes, very good. So Jackson, still a big watch for you?
Yeah.
Still a big chance?
Yeah. Look, I never said he was leaving. I'm just saying clubs are doing their work here and they wouldn't be doing it for nothing. List managers are busy people. They don't have, they don't have time to be wasting energy on other things.
Quick word on TDK.
Update.
Update.
He was good the other night.
He's very good.
I don't have any form of update.
No. Any gut feel?
No. Oh, sorry. This is going to come out to bite me. My gut feels still that he wants to stay at Carlton. But money talks.
So do losses. The less Carlton appear looking like a premiership threat this year, the more his head is going to be turned, I would think.
Yeah. It's every chance they beat Hawthorn, as you said.
And there's every chance they get beaten by 10 goals.
Yes, that's true. Can I just talk another layer to this Thursday night clash?
Yes.
So thousands of people are going to flock to the MCG Thursday night. People will be there having their St Andrews Beach Brewery $15 cheeseburger before the game and wandering over.
I'll be there. In fact, me and research assistant Dan are going because he's Hawthorn.
But there's a team and a fan base 3,000 kilometres away who will be riding this game just as closely as Carlton and Hawthorn fans.
Is it a kilometre or kilometre?
I was told kilometre when I've been in my...
By the people at 7?
Yes.
I've also been told kilometre, but I say kilometre and I refuse to change.
So last year, the man we just spoke of, Tom Barris, when West Coast sent Tom Barris to Hawthorn, the Hawks coughed up a future first rounder, a future second rounder and a future third rounder. At the time when Hawthorn did that deal to acquire Tom Barris, they owned 2 first rounders, one of their own, one of Carlton's, and 2 second rounders, one of their own, one of Carlton's. And when they took Tom Barris off West Coast hands, they said to the Eagles, you can take the pick. Do you want our first rounder and our second rounder? Or do you want Carlton's first and second rounder? West Coast said, thank you, we'll take Hawthorn, we'll take your first and second rounders instead of Carlton's. Now this Thursday night at the MCG, Carlton faces the prospect of starting 0-2 and Hawthorn would leave them 3-0 to start the season. There is a world where it gets the end of this weekend and West Coast is sitting on Hawthorn's first and second rounders for a team that is bound for the top 4. If they start 3-0, 3 big wins, and Carlton, we could be talking about an 0-2 team. Yes, we're early in the season, but we could be talking about a really fascinating decision that came back at the end of the last year.
Sorry, just for those of you who are driving and trying to visualise it, or for those who are listening to us while they go for a bit of a jog or a morning stroll, essentially what Mitch is saying is that West Coast thought that Carlton would be better than Hawthorn in 2025.
Correct.
Which, in fairness to them, a lot of people may have thought.
Yep.
Some people may have thought that Hawthorn had a year where they were hit by reality.
Yep.
After the amazing run of last year, and that Carlton, were a genuine premiership threat. So far be it for us to criticise that from West Coast, but their bet at the moment doesn't look that good.
And we're getting the first real taste of it this weekend. Carlton v Hawthorn. West Coast fans, the footy club will be sitting on the edge of their seats watching that game from 3,000 kilometres away.
Kilometres. Is Curnow playing?
I believe so. We're Tuesday morning. Still has to be picked. But all the noise is that he is. Are you hearing otherwise?
We're getting into air. No. I think he'll play, but we're getting into air raid areas. But just interesting to see what that does to their. I assume what they'll do. I haven't asked anyone about this, but just knowing Carlton's selection committee, match committee, the way I do, I would assume that if Curnow plays, they move Kemp back and Silvani forward and use him as the second ruck.
Yeah.
Because the second ruck of Cripps on the weekend was just an unmitigated disaster. I assume that they couldn't do that again.
Yeah. Well, again, this is my last footy list decision, footy hardcore question. Were they too tall, though, with Haynes, McGovern, Silvani and Wiedering? So if you take out Silvani and put Kemp, does it leave you too tall?
Probably, but I'm not sure they've got heaps of other options.
Yeah. Newman's a pretty underrated out, isn't he?
Yeah, unless they bring Doherty in from being the sub.
Yep.
And use one of those guys as the sub.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put it past Carlton to make Silvani the sub.
Does leave you exposed with the second ruck. Anyway, we're getting into...
Yes, but Carlton do like making their sub their best player, as they did in the final last year with DeConey.
Just one more on the news of the week. So Ross Lyon and Brad Scott both re-signed. They were signed until 2026. They've added each another year until 27.
Smart from Ross and Brad.
Given what you think's coming this year.
Smart, yep.
How much of that do you think is linked to recruitment of players and retention of players? So say St Kilda are going out to market. We've got a coach who's committed for 2025, but also for the next 2 years beyond this. You come to our footy club, you know that Ross is going to be your first coach for the first 2 years minimum. How much is the Damien Hardwick, Hopper Taranto thing put that in the mind of players and player managers out there? Hey, you don't want to get to a situation where you arrive and then 6 months later the coach is out the door.
Yeah, I think it's probably third priority behind cash and the lure of premiership success.
Yep, the coach, as in terms of...
Well, coach stability.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think it helps. But St Kilda and
So facilities under that?
facilities under that.
And then where does the team you support as a kid rank?
Probably somewhere around the team that your partner supported as a kid. I don't think you and I ever gonna. Who did Harley Reid grow up supporting?
Geelong. Country boy.
Just before we finish, can I leave everyone with this?
Very, very smug look on your face before you're about to drop this.
Imagine playing someone where they were drafted.
You rolled with this unclassified last night.
It's true.
Laslenka?
For all the briefing that the Western Bulldogs did about, I'm not really sure if he's a mid, and like all the garbage that I saw that got sent to me during the week at the social media of, but is Bailey Smith really that good a player? You know, like he'll play on a wing, but no, he won't. No, he'll play on the ball next to Dangerfield. Oh, okay, well, let's see what happens.
It's allowed Dangerfield to go forward as well.
He was that far best on ground. And also, can I just side note, the long blonde locks flowing behind the white headband? I mean, just glorious stuff.
Does Geelong's midfield allow that though? Because you've got defensive mids like Tom Atkins and Jack Bowes that allow him to go gallivanting and chase the footy.
I mean, we can make all the excuses we want, but he's just a gun. And a better player than Max Holmes.
I'll be keen to assess the best and fairest finish this year. Bailey might be ahead after one game. It's a long season though.
Also, just before we go, Ginnivan v Schultz. How's that looking?
Ginnivan got his nose in front.
Nose in front? Scotty, please. Please help me out here.
I'm on the Ginnivan side of things.
And this is a little bit harsh. This is a little bit harsh on Mitch. But I just want to know how
Oh, there it is.
how Mitch's man Ben Mackay's travelling for his contract. How much is he on?
An average about $850 a year.
Not aging particularly well.
Copped a ravaging on the commentary that night.
Yeah, he's had better games than what we saw on the weekend.
All right.
But I will maintain that I was just simply talking about his market value at the time. Just on that, how much do you reckon Hawthorn's, in hindsight, looking back, thinking, geez, we made the right call not to throw an extra 100K at Ben Mackay because his decision was on a knife's edge, and now they got Barris and Battle.
Who looked terrific.
Just 2 free agents out of the weekend too. Ed Richards, he is not spoken about probably enough as other free agents. He is a big name to watch given his performance against the Roos. I reckon he was a big part of why the Dogs won that game, especially in the first half on the weekend. And also Brandon Starcevich, free agent, his 3rd concussion in 9 months on the weekend. With all these concussion rules and the way the AFL is handling it these days, and as we saw with Brayshaw, let's hope it never gets to that. It never gets to that with Brandon Starcevich, but it does put clubs' radar up when these concussions start to mount.
Yep.
So it's a watch this space.
All right, that just about does us. Thanks again to our new friends at St Andrews Brewery and their location at Melbourne Park. I'll be there again on Thursday with research assistant Dan. So if you come up and say hello,
You get to meet Dan if you come along.
yep, anyone who comes up and says hello and that they're a podcast fan, I'll buy a pot.
Well, that's
you
an
go.
incentive.
Yeah, so if 100 people come up, it's going to be an expensive day for me. Remember to follow Tradies on iHeart, Spotify, or subscribe on Apple or wherever you get your podcasts. And make sure you're tuning in to Just Quickly and the Air Raid.
Looking forward to the air raid.